What does it mean to be human? I think it's a question that many of us have asked. I think it's a question that could be addressed in many different types of ways. During the 20th and 21st centuries, the centrality of God has been abandoned in Western civilization, and it was substituted. God was no longer at the center of people's thinking. In today's episode of Sit Down and Listen, we'll see the results of this. Let's get right into it. What was the result of the question, what does it mean to be human? Well, the value of a human life became something of a great concern. We talked about Socrates and the unexamined life in our first episode, but his most famous student, the great philosopher Plato, contemplated the question, what is it that makes a human singular? What differentiates humans from other animals? And Plato came to a conclusion that to many of us would sound silly and childish. His conclusion was that a human was a featherless animal with 2 feet, aka a human biped. Until one of his students threw a plucked chicken over the wall of the academy where Plato taught with a sign, "Behold, Plato's Man." We find this question, what is man, in Scripture. The psalmist poses the question, what is man that you are mindful of him? Psalms 8. Because the point is that how we understand humanity will have a big impact on how we treat human beings, the value that we ascribe to human beings. And this is critical to any Christian thought, to the Christian life. It has to include within it a proper understanding of what it means to be human. In other words, a proper anthropology. Anthropos, coming from the Greek root human being, and ology, of course, the study of. We introduced the sculpture of the thinker in our first episode, and I wonder what the thinker would be thinking about the question we are picking apart today. Maybe he is asking the question we all ask at some point or another, who am I? Or maybe the question, what is the meaning of my life? In biblical language, we see the image of our lives being presented, drawn from nature. It is a picture of nature itself. Grass, simple grass, takes center stage as it is the perfect parallel to showcase our true futility. Initially, the grass grows and it flourishes for some time, but then, as it is confronted by the dry sun, it withers and it dies. Now, let me ask you, how pessimistic does that sound? I mean, if you're being honest, how pessimistic does it sound that your life is like grass? And in the middle of our conflict with our fragility, the question must come up in our minds. Do we have significance? Do we have meaning? Is there any authentic value to human life? I think the pessimism of our generation is making the search for these answers all the more difficult for us. And what happened is that historically, after the Second World War ended, after all the blood had been shed, the internment camps were liberated, and the soldiers returned home, a French philosopher by the name of Jean-Paul Sartre, an atheistic, in one of his books, a small book that he titled Nausea, contained a clear picture describing the futility and meaninglessness of human life. In his final remarks, he wrote the statement, "A man is a useless passion." What is a passion? It's a feeling of uncontrollable emotion. It's strong in a way. It's strong in the way that it's shown and it's expressed. That which you are most passionate about, that is your God. What are you most passionate about right now? What do you hold an uncontrollable emotion towards? What is so strong? What is the pull that is just bringing you down to your knees? That is your passion. Now, as humanity, each of us cares about particular things. We all have things we hold near and dear to our hearts. When someone insults us, many of us care. We might act like we don't. Many kids get bullied. Their moms tell them not to let the bully get in their heads. And for a moment, it can work. Of course it can. See, physical wounds can heal, and after a certain period of time, you will be running and skipping and falling again. But words, the insults, the words that are thrown carelessly can sometimes cause scars that might never heal. We all have wounds that have never fully healed as a result of something someone once said. Whether it was to us or about us, it hurts. Nicknames that have stuck with us, and we fall in the trap of believing they define our truest self. And that's the cruel truth right now. That we don't just think. In the first episode, we were talking about thinking, not just feeling. But the truth is that we don't just think. That's not what humanity is. I'm pretty sure that when you're eating food, you're not just thinking. You're not. When we think, that just by itself does not bring meaning to the essence of humanity. Our feelings do change, especially in our consumer-filled lives. How quickly do we change our minds? Trends constantly fade as new ones are created. In high school, crushes seem to follow a weekly catalog. Basically, who do we like now? What's the hottest item to crave? But as Sartre questions and wrestles with this caring and feeling all the hurting happiness, he asks the question, does it matter? Does it mean anything? His conclusion, no. It simply does not. Remember his remarks from his work Nausea, all the feelings we have are nothing more than vanity. It's useless because we have no meaning. This is the central idea that Jean-Paul Sartre is trying to get across. Man is involved in an eternal loop that has no clear starting and ending point, no origin, and no destiny. I would yell because of my disagreement with this French philosopher, even though I do admire people like him. Why? Because they actually think about their position. See, Sartre's worldview was critically and sharply analyzed. And he didn't just reach the conclusions he reached because they randomly came into his head one time. They went through a rigorous thinking process. Now, for us, the common mentality that we find in our society, especially now, the 20th and 21st century, is one of humanist thought, a view that has enthroned man as God, making us the creatures that deserve highest dignity, value, and esteem. These people will be the leaders of social issues. They'll be the first ones fighting against injustice, fighting for equality across the board, wanting to protect the dignity of mankind. But when you ask the humanists, where did mankind come from? What is its origins? You hear crickets in the background. They don't know. It's the same humanist that tells you that you have value and importance, also telling you that both your origin and destiny is insignificant as well. You're a cosmic mistake. They have been rejected. They have rejected the foundation of Christianity and tried to exchange it for a secular worldview. They won't be able to do this. What they believe, their passionate feelings for man, their passionate thoughts about humanity, they wouldn't be able to do this without the solid belief that dominated civilizations. They reject the foundation that is needed to prove their decency and humanity. And I pose the challenge. If you claim that I came from nothing, if my destination is nothing, then therefore I am nothing. Why should I care who drinks from a water fountain? Or why should I care about who has what rights in the world? This again is like a tide. This generation is based on empty feelings with no real support. Now, when we look at the Christian worldview teaches that we as humankind are totally depraved. We are the most wicked creatures that roam the earth. We have ruined this world. We are under a curse. So not only are you grass, but you're evil. What's the verdict given by God? There are none righteous, no, not one. Paul makes this clear in his letter to the Romans. No one does good, no, not one. Who wants to hear this? This is kind of pessimistic too, right? This is one reason why many people reject the biblical message. There is an emphasis on the bondage of the human heart. It's captivated by sinful passions. Not to my surprise, many people don't like to hear the message. People say, this is depressing. How can you believe this? This just doesn't elevate us. But there is no religion, no philosophy that is shaped, that is explored on this earth that takes sin as seriously as Christians. And why do we do that? Why does Christianity take sin seriously? Because if we take sin seriously, it's because people are taken seriously as well. It is a serious matter when one human kills another, when one human hates another, when one human steals or rapes. That's serious and that is wrong. The biblical message is that we're made in the image of God. God is not made in the image of man. We can only find dignity and true value in Him, so we can say we are called to love those who hate us, those who persecute us, love people without any exceptions, not caring for any difference. That's the mark of someone who has received purpose and has been given a new heart.